Beyond the Looking Glass, a photographic journey through Gryphonia. While I was still recovering from my state of near rapture in front of the looking glass, Ms. Bordeaux suggested that I spend some time in the virtual archives, delving into the detailed study of life on Gryphonia. The Volkov brothers' notes served as my guidebook. Let's begin our expedition with the class of animals even more renowned than the griffins themselves. The Draconians. These massive flying reptiles once dominated Gryphonia during a period concurrent with our age of dinosaurs, and they are the ancestral beings from which the Gryphiform class descends. Their evolution occurred during a time when mana levels were significantly higher than they are now. They utilized this abundant resource to strengthen their bodies, defy gravity, and, judging from the excess of burnt remains, generate fire seemingly from thin air. When the mana levels dropped, their fire vanished, and thus they evolved feathers to stay warm. Next, they lost the ability to sustain their massive forms. Eventually, they adopted more bird-like traits to reduce their weight enough to achieve flight, although many spent so much time on the ground that they eventually evolved into fully quadrupedal creatures. Dracothera. Class Draconia consists of 5 orders. The first true dragon ever identified exemplifies the Dracograndia order. These creatures were nothing short of colossal, rearing up on their powerful hind limbs to a towering height ranging from 30 to 40 feet, with their commanding presence further accentuated by a wingspan that extended at least 50 feet. Their forelimbs terminated in a pair of clawed hands, endowed with remarkable dexterity due to opposable thumbs. Their skulls were crowned with sharp horns, possibly for display purposes or fighting others for dominance. Their spines were resplendent with bone spikes that likely served both as a form of defense against larger predators and as a spectacle of intimidation against rivals. Fossilized bones found within their remains show signs of extreme heat damage, sparking a debate as to whether they cooked their prey before eating or burned them alive. Later, the remains of other Draconians, known for their fire-resistant nature, were discovered with tooth marks, but no evidence of fire-related damage. Thus, it seems more plausible that these flames were wielded as a tool for hunting, rather than merely a culinary choice. Pyrodracus volcanica. Commonly referred to as drakes, the members of the Dracothera order were notably distinct for their complete lack of flight. In a peculiar twist of their evolutionary journey, their wings had vanished altogether, leaving them to channel their mana into cultivating robust, sizable bodies. However, the precise physical forms of these creatures exhibited remarkable diversity compared to their winged counterparts, vacillating between bipedal and quadrupedal configurations. While many adopted a bipedal stance, a crucial distinction lay in their inability to develop the dexterous hands observed in the Dracograndians, setting them apart from their winged cousins. The volcanic drakes were one such species of biped. It's worth noting that even fire-breathing dragons couldn't have thrived in the unforgiving landscape these giants called home. However, by walking on their hind legs, they minimized their direct exposure to molten rock. Yet even the air in these locales would have been perilous for less adapted creatures. Scholars speculate that, given the scarce availability of prey within the volcanic fields, these drakes likely embarked on hunting excursions. They would then retreat to their sanctuary within the molten realms to rest and nurture their young. Aerovela maritima. Wyverns, classified within the Draconomanius order, opted for an entirely different trajectory. Evolving to be lighter, they cast off their forelimbs and expanded their already sizable wings. Their remarkable speed and agility positioned them as the sole aerial contenders capable of rivaling dragons in the skies. While their average stature might have rendered them the smallest members within the Draconian class, their capacity to outpace pursuing dragons during hunts, and even to take drakes by surprise, granted them an unconventional role within the primeval Gryphonian food chain. Not all wyverns hunted drakes. Coastal wyverns adopted a distinct hunting strategy. Perched on the precipitous cliffs along the shoreline, they would launch themselves over the shallows of the coastal waters, searching for fish to capture. Their method, akin to an eagle's fishing technique, involved swooping down with their clawed hind legs to seize their aquatic prey, Once secured, they would then transport their catch back to their secure, rocky abodes for consumption. It's probably for the best that they stayed close to shore, since monsters lurked within the ocean's depths. Mega Draco Leviathan. Do you remember the map adorned with fanciful sea serpents? On Gryphonia, these creatures aren't the stuff of imagination. They were once a reality. Stripped of wings, arms, and even legs, the Dracomare order commanded the ancient seas, much like the Dracograndia ruled the skies. Mana enabled them to inhabit every corner of the ocean, from the abyssal depths of the ocean floor to the icy waters of the polar seas. Their serpentine forms not only allowed them to elegantly traverse their watery domain, but also build up enough momentum to launch themselves above the waves, seizing unsuspecting drakes before they could react. And reigning supreme among them was the Leviathan. Occupying the vast expanses of the open ocean permitted them to attain colossal proportions. To this day, they stand as the largest creatures ever to evolve on Gryphonia. Functioning as apex predators, they dined on smaller Dracomares and even potentially ambushed the occasional dragon, dragging it to the depths where its fiery breath would be rendered futile. This immense predator's existence shaped the balance of power in the ancient oceans, casting a shadow of terror and dominance over the seas of Gryphonia's past. Vermisaurus tremulus. As the sea serpents elegantly navigated the depths of water, the Wyrms, or Vermiguardia, carved their way through the very earth. These subterranean predators meant that even the ground could give rise to hidden horrors. Only the air above and solid rock below could provide refuge from worm attacks, and even then, safety was assured only by maintaining a substantial distance from soil, sand, or gravel. Their long, sinuous bodies allowed them to extend over half their length above the ground, enabling them to strike at prey and swiftly drag them into their burrows. While substantially smaller than their cousins, the Dracomare, Wyrms were a terrifying force all their own. Beneath the prairies and grasslands, the insidious tremulous worm lurked. A master of concealment, it adeptly burrowed through the soft earth, moving unseen beneath its unsuspecting prey. Its distinct tendrils located on the top and rear of its head were incredibly sensitive, granting it an uncanny ability to detect even the faintest disturbances on the surface. Endowed with such heightened perception, the tremulous worm remained hidden from view while silently trailing its victims above, ready to deliver a precise and lethal strike at a moment's notice. Dracogigas colossus. While the Leviathan was the largest in history, gigadragons were the largest on land and in the air. Little is known about gigadragons beyond the obvious fact that they were enormous. To imagine such colossal creatures flying overhead is to invite madness. They must have been a terror of unparalleled magnitude. Unfortunately, we'll never know for certain. To this day, only one horn and a fragment of a wing phalanx have ever been unearthed. Animals must be rapidly buried by sediment to fossilize for later examination, and such a process is unlikely to occur with a creature of this size. The exact scale of these monsters may forever remain a mystery, yet the horn itself measures over 15 feet in length and isn't even complete. The phalanx fragment suggests that their wings were proportionate to the size of their horns, implying that these colossi might have been able to fly despite their bulk. Such an ability would have required an astonishing amount of mana. Dr. Sato has even proposed the intriguing idea that the decline in mana levels began because such behemoths became more prevalent during the latter stages of the Draconian Age. In the end, they might have been victims of their own success. Dracoplumosis. As mana vanished from the Gryphonian environment, the most intricate survival strategies of the Dracograndia also faded into obscurity. Prior to this juncture, the touch of cold was foreign to any dragon, as they could instantaneously transmute the boundless mana enveloping them into a raging inferno. Consequently, they remained bereft of mechanisms to retain warmth when this potent capability was wrested from their grasp. In the face of their crumbling world, nearly all Draconians were confronted with the looming threat of extinction. Thankfully, evolution perpetually embarks on ventures of experimentation, and a faction of Dracograndia had already cultivated feathered crests for purposes of courtship displays. Gradually, feathered dragons asserted their dominance, emerging as the sole survivors of their kind. The downy insulation effectively conserved their bodily warmth where it was most crucial. Furthermore, given that their membranous wings presented excessive exposed skin, the fluff underwent a transformation into flight feathers, substituting their traditional dragon wings with structures akin to those of the birds in our world. And yet, this was not enough to retain dominion over the sky. Of Adracus aviforme, mana levels continued to plummet, and soon there wasn't nearly enough to counteract the feathered dragon's mass. First, they shrank in size, shedding weight with every lost foot of body length. In fact, everything was shrinking, including their prey. Teeth were unnecessary dead weight, and these dragons transitioned to lightweight beaks, allowing them to efficiently feed on smaller, more available food sources. Furthermore, the avian dragon's skeletal modifications were pivotal for their survival in the skies. The development of hollow bones with intricate honeycomb structures significantly reduced their overall weight while maintaining the structural integrity necessary for flight. This adaptation allowed them to conserve energy and stay aloft for longer periods. Another remarkable change occurred in their hands. The loss of opposable thumbs and the dexterity they once provided might seem like a disadvantage, but this adaptation was likely driven by the shift in their diet and survival needs. As their primary food sources became smaller and required less manipulation, the simplification of their hands became a trade-off for enhanced flight capabilities. Gryphoraptor primitivus. Proto-Gryphons marked the end of the Draconians and the beginning of the Gryphiforms. The rapid decline of mana had finally begun to slow down, ending at levels roughly equal to those in modern times. But the damage had already been done. There was no longer enough mana for the majority of the descendants of dragons to maintain prolonged flight, and since they now spent more time on the ground, they became fully quadrupedal. It would not be until the Harpiforms that they would regain the dexterous hands of their ancestors. Many generations of constant struggle and starvation also led to brand new traits, such as long-term care of their young. It is believed that the mammary glands of modern-day Gryphiforms first appeared with the Proto-Gryphons. It is also assumed that this is when external ears first developed, given that they had accepted a more land-based life and no longer needed to shed every last ounce to stay in the air. However, it's hard to know that for certain. It is generally assumed that dragons did not have ears, given that no soft-bodied draconian fossils have anything resembling an external ear. But it is difficult to prove a negative.